So this is part three of our series on the Ukraine and Russia war. Thank you for joining me. My name is Anthony Mukanya. Before I carry on, so if you like my channel and you want to support my channel, please don't hesitate to like this video, share this video, and hit the subscribe button. And that will encourage me to produce these videos and to explain to you a little bit more about what is at stake here. Okay, and so in this part, I'm going to try to explain to everyone what is at stake, especially as it relates to the big major players in the conflict. So you have the United States on one hand, and you have the EU and the NATO. Let's just say the other member of the NATO alliance, as well as China. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into this. So, from the United States perspective, okay, you've got to understand. I do believe that the United States is making also a few mistakes. But first of all, from the perspective, what they're trying to accomplish, okay, is to try to knock Russia from the group of great powers. Okay, so you've got to remember that there was a period of time when the United States was basically the only dominant, up until I would say 2017, the only dominant power broker in the world after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Okay, and so the question then the question now that they're facing is trying to restrict Russia as much as possible so that Russia is depleted both economically and militarily in the war so that they can prevent Russia from fighting anywhere else if they are indeed bogged down in that specific part of the world. So that's one of the objectives. The other objective is also to try to avoid a potential realignment or a closer tie between Russia and China. Okay, so those two are both friends, but they have also a very complicated relationship because they don't always see eye to eye, and they both want basically to become the big player in the economic state on the at the global stage. So that this is the big these are the big reason why the United States wants to be implicated there. And thirdly, militarily, it also give if Ukraine manages to win, and I think John Mershamed does talk about that it is basically impossible, and he doesn't think it's going to happen. But he does say that if it is in the case that Ukraine does win the war, what is at stake is that the United States will be able to impose terms on Russia in terms of their the standing, or as I say, to knock them off the prestige of being a great power. There's even talk that potentially Russia will be divided up because again, Russia. Not only militarily they are good, but economically, being a country that is very vast with a lot of resources, it will give them the opportunity to weaken one big player on the global stage. Okay. Um, so that is what the American objective. But for the EU, the Europeans, and that by that specifically mentioned France and Germany, what is very important for them is security concern. So, meaning what? Meaning that for them, they don't want a resurgent Russia, sorry, which will potentially cause them also problems in the future, and they want to be sure that they are still protected by the United States in a sense, and that's why, in my opinion, they will follow the United States in any war at this point, including really stupid one, in terms of regime change around the world. So we've seen that now in Iraq. We've seen it happen. Sorry, not in Iraq, but we've seen it happen in Afghanistan. We've seen it happen in Libya and in Syria, where they've been working together basically to what advance quote unquote democracy, but really, in my opinion, is not really democracy in any kind, or it is at least democracy in what it suits those nations more specifically, which is problematic, right? So that is the perspective of the EU, okay? And then there is it is also China, okay? So you may have heard that China has a 12th plan that they proposed, and that plan included a political settlement agreement between Russia and Ukraine that will foster economic activity and help both countries to grow economically. But as I said before, the problem with Russia and China, remember again, they do share, these are two nuclear power, and they do share a border as well. Okay? As I said to you, Russia is a really, really vast country. And what is at stake is that at the same time, so China obviously ideologically are very aligned with Russia, okay? But at the same time, they want to have the benefit of trading with the West because trading with, with the status quo in the war currently, they will be very happy because they get natural resources from Russia at discounted prices. Okay, and by the way, the European also um, are under the yoke, so to speak, of the Americans, because at the moment, for example, the EU is forced to buy natural gas and oil from the United States at a much higher price that they would have paid to the Russian. Remember, since the Nord Stream pipeline has is basically not working with the explosion about a year ago. So the Chinese want to foster a relationship with the Russian and also want to enhance the prestige on the on the global stage. Okay. And so, in order to achieve that, they see themselves, as opposed to the American, where they mainly use not just economics and financial ties, but they use the army. The Chinese always see themselves as power brokers or kingmakers in the sense that they want to prioritize primarily an economic economic ties, okay? Because remember, the Chinese only when you have over 1.4 billion people in your country, the economy is all you care about because you also don't want to face potential issues at home like a rebellion. So they want to enhance the position and on the international stage, and they want to leave leeway to Russia, but not too much so that they become completely independent. Not completely independent, but they can also rival the power that the Chinese have at the moment. Okay, but nevertheless, they have a common enemy, China and Russia at the moment, which is the West. Okay, so basically you have I would say NATO and have NATO and the G7 countries who are contributing about 30% of the world GDP, roughly, and you have Russia, China, India, Brazil, which are also forming their own alliance, and they represent about 32% of the world GDP. So uh, they want to enhance, as I say, their standing, their power, to project the power in the world as peacemakers. And I think this is where the United States at the moment has problems, because they believe that they have squandered, at least diplomatically, the ability to say, well, listen, we can broker a peace deal between countries when they know very well that they have their own incentive to create problems, right? So this is the context. This is what is at stake for each of the great powers, as I said, as it relates to the Ukraine conflict. And we all have to, keep an eye on the situation, as alliances can be formed, on several, depending on the circumstances, really. So yeah, so now that I've mentioned that, I hope that gives you a better understanding of what is happening in Ukraine, the background, the incentive, both politically, economically, for each one. And I personally, I hope that there will be a negotiated settlement, so that peace and prosperity can return um, to these countries. And lastly, and I believe I need to talk about, is that um, I believe they and I think Professor John Mersham does talk about that, where he basically also says that we have to be practical. Okay, all these countries have to be practical, and in order to both protect their own interest and protect themselves, um, but to make sure that they promote peace, so that the number of people who are at the moment dying in Ukraine will cease, will drop, and there will be some sort of peace deal. So, according to him, Professor Mersheimer that I mentioned, I'm just gonna go and change. So, if anyone out there wants to follow, you can go and find this specific conversation, and he does go through the role of China. He does, and especially as it relates to ending this war. And I believe this is the way forward. I think a lot of people have noticed now that there is no more this monopolar world that existed. Now it's at least bipolar, and therefore countries like Russia and China, and hopefully also in the future India, will have much more to say in economic affairs compared to just the West. And I think even in some corners, I've seen even in France here, where a lot of people are now saying that perhaps, and that's my prediction, after this war, which basically will just be the states of things in at the end, obviously, because at some point all the cannon and the guns will have to stop. But they will just stop where they are. I don't see where you don't see anybody. I think Russia will win, but not in a way that will be really significant and in the end of the day. And the only way for Russia to technically lose, which is not enough, and that's why I'm saying it's not going to happen, would have, yeah, because if they do feel that they're losing, they might actually use nuclear weapons. And Professor Mearsheimer does talk about that also, and I believe that is also one fear that I have. and that will just escalate the whole thing. So there you have it from all sides. In order to understand, there is also one possible power broker, sorry, a peace broker here, which is Israel. Because Israel and Russia, it's very complicated, but Israel, despite being an ally of the Americans, they don't want to impose sanctions on Russia because Russia does let them reach Iran somehow, to fly over and reach Iran to potentially, in case of a war with uh, with Iran. But at the same time, there are closer ties between Iran now and Russia. That's developing. So we all have to keep an eye on the situation. But for everybody out there, this is the situation, and I hope you understand better what is happening, and hopefully you'll be also able to explain that to your friends and family. So that's it for me. So again, see, if you like my channel and you want to support my channel, please press the like button on this video. You can write me comments, or you can send me an email or messages, but please subscribe to this channel. Thank you.